Churches, though, are starting to cut budgets, and others are pushing pause on things and just holding off on important decisions. But we're here to say that the actual greatest threat to church finances right now is not these things. It's not inflation or recession. The greatest threat to church finances is operating under an outdated model of church economics. Well, hey, Carol, welcome. All right, question for you. Would you rather eat the exact same thing for every meal for the rest of your life, or never be able to eat the same thing again for the rest of your life?
Like a caveat question here. Is it a 3-course meal?
Let's say it's one.
You know what I'm saying? I think have to eat something different every time, which is shocking to me. But I think if you eat the same thing every day, which I love doing, for the rest of my life though, like what if I chose, I don't know, spaghetti, and then I wanted brownies one day and I could never have them?
All right. Well, today we are talking about first century funding for the church. Exciting. And actually, we sat down and had a conversation with Mark DeYmaz, who's part of the Church Economist, and Greg Daley, who is the founder and visionary here at Pourbaix. And we talked through 21st century funding and how churches are finding tens of thousands of dollars to fund their mission. Really exciting conversation, and we're going to jump into that now.
Here we go.
The greatest threat to church finances right now isn't inflation, isn't a recession, or even lower giving. Wait, what? See, the news is full of all these stories right now about the economy, trade wars, market inflation. I mean, you can't open a news feed, turn on the TV, etc., without this coming up. It's on everyone's mind, and that includes pastors. We know that pastors are confused and stressed and worried. And frankly, many are trying to even ignore what's going on. The churches, though, are starting to cut budgets, and others are pushing pause on things and just holding off on important decisions. But we're here to say that the greatest threat to church finances right now is not these things. It's not inflation or recession. The greatest threat to church finances is operating under an outdated model of church economics. The churches who are thriving right now aren't just reacting to the economy, they're rethinking how they fund their mission. The good news is that we have experts in this space who have helped hundreds of churches and hundreds of pastors with their finances and are going to share with you the concepts that you need to be thinking about, along with give you tools and resources so that you can be proactive with your finances. Whether the economy resolves soon or not, what we're talking about is actually beyond that. It's things that essentially every church needs to be thinking about in the 21st century. So the good news, though, is that as this shift is happening, churches are unlocking tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars towards mission, and they are unlocking new opportunities, new ways to be missional with their impact in their community. We're going to go through a few different workshops and tell you how you can do that at your church and give you the tools and resources you need to get started. I'm Dan Pourbaix. I'm with Pourbaix, your church finance team. And with that, let me introduce our experts. First, we have Greg Daley. Greg Daley is a church planter and XP. He's the founder of and CEO of Pourbaix. Pourbaix has helped over 400 churches with their finances in areas of accounting, payroll, and advisory service. Collectively, Pourbaix works with churches managing over $400 million a year. And we're also joined by Mark DeYmaz. He's been a pastor for 40 plus years, founding pastor of Mosaic Church in Little Rock, co-founder of the Mosaic Global Network, and CEO of ChurchEconomist. He's also the author of books like The Coming Revolution in Church Economics and Disruption. And he's worked with hundreds of churches to think creatively about how they fund their church and switch to a 21st century model for funding their church. So guys, welcome. I want to start with you, Greg. You've worked with hundreds of churches and thousands of pastors. What's the difference you see in pastors who are leading strong financially, even in uncertain times, versus those who are struggling or stuck?
Really, I think what I see out there is it comes down to mindset. And really, I see 3 different mindsets out there. There's probably more, but I see typically they fall into these 3 categories. One is the head in the sand mindset. I think it's the ostrich that has that, where they stick their head in the sand and they just ignore things and hope the predator goes away. And that mindset is one of avoidance. It just doesn't want to talk about the issue. And so they just avoid it altogether. together. Then there's one that's kind of more in the middle, and that's, I know it's an issue, I know it needs to be talked about, I know it's big, but it's awkward. So it's more like the sex talk with your teenage kid. It's like, you know, it has to happen, but you get awkward, so then the church gets awkward around it too, and they don't really know where you're headed. The one that we hope and we try to get people to is ownership. Ownership says that doesn't mean you own the church, but you own the conversation, and you own that it's an important topic as part of your church. It's something that you're leading from that ownership. We see thriving churches, that stance, that ownership stance.
That's great. Now, Mark, you talk with a lot of pastors. As Greg said, they're embarrassed by their numbers, overwhelmed by their numbers, so they're hiding their head, or they feel ashamed or stuck with their church's finances. But you've been seeing this, and you've been helping churches shift to this 21st century funding model. What would you say to the pastor who feels like the financial future is out of their control, and what hope might you be able to offer?
Yeah, I think just picking up on what Greg said, where you want to be is confident. You want to lean into this and not shy away from the conversation, particularly people with business background or economics in your own congregation will appreciate that. Now, the fact is, professionally, none of us were trained to do this. You don't go to Bible college or seminary and get a business background or understanding. Generally speaking, I mean, I got a D-Min, a doctor degree, not one class, not 1 hour was on business or anything. It's all OTJ training, if you will, on the job. Having said that, and this is true for lawyers, doctors, professional services type people, where you can get your confidence on is not that you fully understand things or can explain it to everybody. Again, there's tools and helps like Parable, like the Church Economist for that. But this is where you want to empower and equip people with business savvy, with economic understanding, and who have experience in this space. Much like a football team, there's a head coach of the team, but no head coach coaches offense, defense, and special teams. So you're always empowering and creating a team. And yes, you can be anxious. The economy, all the things you said, you can be shy or pull away from it because you don't really know how to talk competently in this. You didn't sign up to generate income. You signed up to pastor people. All well and good, no problem at all. But instead of being anxious about it, lean into it. And sure, you can get up to speed in a lot of ways through resources that we offer both at Parable and the Church Economist. But again, your biggest play is to understand something needs to be done and then to equip and empower people alongside you who understand how to play that game, how to play special teams, if you will, and get them into positions alongside you, coaching that team, coaching that game up.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
love
great.
what you said there about because when I think about ownership, you're owning the conversation. That doesn't mean every bit of the conversation has to come out of your mouth. And I think sometimes pastors get caught up with that. But you might have the right questions. Get the experts in the room that have the right answers that can then help you answer the questions.
Yeah. I not to belabor it, but think about it again using a football analogy. You have to be the head coach. The pastor's the head coach of the team. You have to understand the game of football, and that means generally offense, defense, special teams. You need to understand that. But again, you don't have to coach every aspect of the game. Some coaches, maybe they played in the NFL or college football and they were a quarterback. So they say, I'll be the head coach and I will also be the coordinator of the offense. But then they look for people who know defense and who know special teams. And I think, Greg and Dan, that's basically what we're talking about. Don't feel anxious. You have to understand everything. Your expertise, largely for most pastors, is in the spiritual realm. It's in the spiritual game. It's the pastoral ministry. But in terms of community engagement, justice, compassion, mercy, as well as leveraging assets to generate income, that's not necessarily your game or most pastors' game. And that's where we want to get the defensive specialists, the special team specialists, so to speak, empowered alongside and build out our teams. And you understand the whole game. You don't have to coach the entire game at that level.
Yeah, I love that. Well, when we talk about shifting economics, we talk about economy, like those are negative things. But what I hear you saying is there's so many opportunities when churches are shifting. And what are these opportunities right now that we're seeing that churches are actually able to take advantage of and actually to like what's the positive of this, not the negative side of things shifting?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, the old adage is think outside the box, right? Or free your mind. I wrote in a chapter of one of my books, a chapter called Free Your Mind. And I think if you think about how churches were funded in the 20th century, by and large, tithes and offerings, right? The giving of your members. Well, I certainly will encourage generosity. We expect our members, including us as pastors, to give, to tithe, to be generous, sacrificial, faithful with our giving. Yeah, that's not going away. But what freeing your mind in this century is recognizing that tithes and offerings alone will not be enough to fund your mission, let alone church, I should say your church, let alone engaging the community well and advancing the common good, the kingdom of God. So we're going to have to free our minds and allow ourselves to dream, to think, and to be intelligent, both theologically as well as sociologically, in order to create multiple streams of income, not just a single income stream, again, like tithes and offerings. One of the ways you can think about that is that in 1960, less than 20% of American households had two or more paychecks. Today, that number is over 80%. And so more than 80% of US households have at least two or more income streams just to make it in life, to be a middle-class family, if you will. I often joke, I'll talk to an audience and say, how many of y'all have more than two or more income streams in your household? And most hands go up, and I go, I guess everybody's rich then, right? And everybody laughs, because we know, given the times, given the economy, it takes two or more income streams just to live a generally middle-class life. We're back up to 1960 or 70, one paycheck in the household, you could afford a house, you had a car or two, there was discretionary and time for the mother. So all to say, times have changed, but the church hasn't changed. And we are still relying on a single paycheck, if you will, meaning our weekly tithes and offerings, where the entire American household and body of American people have moved way beyond that to two or more income streams, again, just to live a middle-class life. And if you understand that, then you recognize to lean in is to say, hey, tithes and offerings, great, but how else? How can we free our mind? How can we expand our understanding to chase local, state, federal grants, donations from others outside, and leverage our assets to generate profitable income? It's all in play. It's theological, it's sociological, and understanding that will help you think about what could be done in your context to get beyond stagnation or even decline.
That's a mouthful. I would echo all of that. In the scheme of this, there's a lot of opportunity. And with opportunity sometimes comes like a start doing list. And a lot of churches get into that mindset of, I'm going to start doing this, I'm going to start doing that. What they often don't do is a stop doing list. We worked with a church they were about 100-year-old church. To give an example, they were a bigger church. They've been doing this pageant thing every Christmas for years. I mean, like 50 years. And nobody really looked at it, go, is this still relevant? Are we really impacting our community? They saved over $1 million by cutting that out.
Wow.
They didn't have to start anything. In fact, it was a lot of work gone from the church and reallocated to things that were actually impacting their community. Not every church is going to cut one program and find $1 million. That's a big budget. What can you stop doing that's maybe not as effective that can go towards some of this start doing things?
Yeah, I love that, Greg. Such a great point. I worked with a church similarly that was losing $35,000 a month based on what they're giving versus their expenses. They had 19 months to live based on how much was in their savings account. I said to that church, do you guys have a year-end offering? And, oh, yeah, we have a year-end offering. I said, what do you use it for? They say it's benevolence. I said, you are the benevolence. You don't understand. You don't have the money to take in to give away. You need money. And we flipped that, stopped doing, to your point, and started generating income for the church, for its bills to advance. And benevolence was a part of that. I said to that group, I said, how much do you think if we pitch this thing towards that, benevolence is a part of some other things, start doing something new, stop doing something old, to your point, how much do you think we can, this church can generate? They said 100,000. We pushed it out there. They got $265,000 in that year-end offering that year. So again, another illustration of your good point. Yes, we can start doing some things, but we probably need to start by stop doing some things, or recasting some of the things we're doing, pitching it for the 21st century.
That's great. Well, I hope you all are as excited as I am. We've got 2 more sessions where we're going to dig into this, and we're going to give you practical tools that you can use to really make sure that you are unlocking tens of thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can be using to fund your church and to fund the mission. So join us for these next sessions. I will say that we have some tools that we're going to be talking about and point you to different resources.